Welcome to Diagrams Done Right. My name is Rebecca, and my business is Hoff Math. My website is hoffmath.com. My TPT store is called Hoff Math. I've just finished my 27th year teaching high school math. This past year, I taught pre-calculus and statistics. And in this presentation, I'm going to talk about a software that I use to make diagrams. Okay, before we get into it, I want to mention the free resource to go along with this presentation, which is a collection of some diagrams that I've made using the software that I'm about to show you. I have it as a PDF as well as a Word document, and you can just go to that bit.ly link there at the bottom and you get your free resource. So you can copy the diagrams and paste them into your worksheets or your presentations. Okay, who is this presentation for? If you are a geometry teacher or a trigonometry teacher and you have to make a lot of diagrams, this is the presentation for you. Or if you are teaching elementary or middle school and you teach concepts with geometry and trigonometry, this is for you. Or yeah, anybody making any diagrams and you're tired of hand drawing them or drawing them on PowerPoint or whatever, or copying and pasting and screenshots and things like that. So what you're going to learn how to navigate the software, how to create the diagrams, and then how to export them or, copy paste them into your documents. Okay, so the software is called Math Illustrations, and it is not a free download, unfortunately. You can get a free 30-day trial if you go to that website, mathillustrations.com, and then after that is $35. To me, totally worth it. I paid out of pocket for it, out of my own pocket, but if you have money in a budget at your school, it's not that much of a stretch to pay $35 for a site. Well, not a site license, but just for your own laptop. The students don't need it, so you don't need a site license. And if you're interested in my affiliate link, then I think I get 5% for everybody that purchases with my affiliate link. You can go to that bit.ly link down there, but no pressure. You can also just go to the regular through the main website and download it. Okay, so let's get started. So this is what the software looks like when I open it. I may have changed some settings, or maybe not. But the first thing I tend to do, since I'm not usually working in the coordinate plane, is I go ahead and I toggle the grid axes. If you do it once, you're going to get the grid. You do it again, they're just going to disappear. So at the top, you'll notice that you've got some typical menus, draw, annotate, constraint. I tend to mostly work over here on these menus on the right-hand side of the screen. And occasionally I will use some of the things up here in the construct menu or in the calculate menu. So let's just jump right in. So the most popular tool I tend to use is a line segment tool. So if I just grab that tool and just create a line segment, it's automatically going to be labeled for me. And then maybe I create another line segment, something like that. Then I'm going to go back to my pointer tool. I'm going to hold down the shift key. I'm going to select the first line segment and the second segment. And then you have these things are interesting. You've got the constraint options where if you want them to be a certain distance or length, if you want them to be perpendicular, if you want to force them to be a certain angle, what I'm looking at here are congruent and parallel. So if I select parallel, it will force them to be parallel. You'll notice that you'll see the parallel symbols have shown up, and then no matter how I attempt to move them, they will be always parallel to each other. Now, I'm going to undo that. I'm just going to select the parallel symbols and press delete. Now they're not parallel anymore. But what I could also do, here's what's crazy, is I can select them, hold down the shift key, select the second one, and annotate them as being parallel, but then they're clearly not parallel. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to force them to be parallel. And then I'm going to draw another line segment here, like so. And I'm going to force that line segment to be perpendicular to that one. So I select those two line segments, make sure I select the segment, not the symbol, and force that they're perpendicular. And of course, I can drag that over like so. And then if I, whoops, drag around, then they're parallel. Now, if I want it to look really perfect and I want that segment AB to be completely like horizontal on my paper, sometimes I will turn the grid on and then I will create the line segments on top of the axes, on top of the x-axis, and that makes it quite nice looking. All right, now maybe I don't want these points on the end, so I can select all the points, hold down the shift key, you can right click and you can change their color or their size if you want. I actually want to hide them. So you can just select hide, or you can do Control H on your keyboards, probably Command H if you're on a Mac. And then maybe I want these to actually have arrows on the end of them. So let me select all three of these line segments, right click, and it says arrowheads. We want them at the start and the end points. You can even, if I right click and go to arrowhead size, you can choose how big you want the arrowheads to be. It was quite large. And maybe you even want to label these lines. Maybe you want them to be lines J, H, and K. So then I go up here and I grab the text box, and I'm going to choose lowercase j just on my keyboard. I can select it. I can make it italicized. You can choose from all the different fonts that you have on your computer. You'll notice down here you also have Greek letters, lowercase Greek, uppercase Greek, and you even have some symbols that are quite useful. I use the degree symbol quite a bit. I say OK, and then you can take the J label and drag it around maybe over here. If you want it to be pinned right there, you can click on that little pin, and then you can't move the J symbol. Now, you might be thinking, oh no, what if I wanted to move? I want to change the angle or something, and now I can't do it. You can, and maybe I even want to hide, if I do, I want to hide the parallel symbols, which I actually don't want to do. Let me undo that, but you can if you wanted to. If I wanted to move them around, I can right click any empty space and choose toggle hidden. And then maybe I need to turn that back on, go back to my pointer tool, and then I can adjust that point if I wanted to. Or you can also right click in any empty space and choose show all. And then everything that I had hidden is now back again. So then I can freely move things around, but then unfortunately I have to go through and select them all to hide them again. Okay, I got a clean page. Now I'm going to make something else. I'm going to make some of the diagrams that actually show up in that freebie. I'm going to choose a circle tool, and I'll just click anywhere, and I'm going to go here like so, and I'm going to draw in a radius. So from A to B is a radius. I'm going to put another point over here, point C. Now you can, if you want to, click on that letter and make it any other letter. So if I keep my caps lock on, maybe I want that letter to be point R. Yeah, you can name it whatever letter you want to. This time, oh, let me do another segment here, another radius here from A to C. This time I actually want there to be like a tangent line at point C, and I want it to extend all the way through. So what I will do here is I'm actually going to choose the infinite line tool and click right on the C, and then of course I can drag it around. Clearly it's not tangent, but if I just, maybe I drop it here, there's no other point on the line, but then I can put a line segment on top of that infinite line, that point D right there, get my select tool, and I'm going to choose the radius and that segment, and I'm going to force the right angle. And so now that line, the full infinite line is tangent. And if you don't want the students to see that it's parallel, or sorry, that's perpendicular, then you can do a Control H to hide the perpendicular symbol. And then maybe you want to take a line segment and create another line segment from B to D. And the D is kind of covered up there, so you can move it around. You can move that one a little closer. Sometimes it doesn't always mean that the points are blue and everything else is black. So sometimes I'll right click and I'll choose the point properties color. My colors are a bit messed up. They're not the default colors anymore, but you can go through and edit your color list and choose whatever colors you like. Maybe I want them to all be black. Sometimes if I don't want the points to be seen, I'll go to make the point color white, but then I've got like a little hole right there. So I will right click on that and choose arrange and send it to back. And then the point kind of looks like it disappears. Now, one thing I will say, let me undo some of that, is if you delete a point that something is, let me talk about it this way. If I were to maybe, I want to take point P and point D, and then I want to choose not constraint, but the annotate for the distance. Then I can put something here, like 7 centimeters or whatever. Whoops. Here we go, 7 centimeters. And then I'm like, oh, I don't like that blue point, so I'm going to hide it. Control H to hide it. Oh no, my little annotation went away. So in that case, well, I can definitely hide the label. Control H to hide the label of the B and hide also the label of the D. And then this is where I might want to turn the points white and then send them to the back for the arrangement. Or sometimes I'll just choose their color to be black And then I'll just make the size the smallest as possible. Point would be a size 1. Now you can change the font size of the text here. If you right click on that, text properties, text size. So you can make it too large, but there's lots of, excuse me, you can change the style as well. And if you want to change the font itself, you can go to all properties. And then here is the font choice here, normal. Now, while I'm there, I want to mention that if you want to change your default settings, if you go to edit preferences, then under text and pictures, this is where you can change your default font name that you like. And actually, you can even change for the geometry the default point color if you want it to always be black, which I'm going to change that right now because I do want mine. I'm going to make another diagram. I'm just going to do a basic triangle. Now with the triangle, you can choose a polygon tool. So if I went maybe this time I want to put it on top of the axes so I know that this side down here is going to be perfectly horizontal on my paper, and I'll just turn off my axes. And then when you do the polygon tool, it encloses a polygon with a color. You can right click in the and say fill properties, and you can say none. You can put in different diagonal hatches. You can change the color. Then you can change the transparency. The default transparency is 40%, but you can make it 0% transparency. So that's really some dark. Personal choice. You can, if you don't want it, you can just select it and just press the delete key on your keyboard. Now I want this to be congruent, so I'm going to make these congruent like so. Those little congruency symbols are too small, so I'm going to do line properties, line color. Yeah, we'll make it black, and we'll do thickness of 3, and pretty good. And then I want to mark this angle. Maybe I'm teaching trigonometry, and I'm doing like a side angle scenario, so I can just select that side and that side, and then I just want to annotate the angle, and then it's going to want me to put a number or a symbol in here, but if I just press the space bar, then I don't have a label there, and I don't really want the arrows. I just want it to be the little arc, so I can right click on it and choose show arrowheads no. You can also change the tick or arc count there. You can change the line properties if you want it to be a little thicker, like a 3, like those other symbols are. And then I have a very nice looking isosceles triangle there. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is, let me show you what it looks like in the finished product. So this is the finished product. You notice I just did a copy paste. I had an image on my Word document and I just pasted it in. And I do this all the time if I'm trying to maybe copy a document, a diagram that I've seen somewhere else, but I want to make it a little cleaner. I want to remove some information, or maybe it's just too blurry and I need it to be a bit sharper. So for this one, I'm going to turn on my axes. I'm going to draw my line segments on top of my axes here. And then I'm going to draw another line segment from the origin emanating out here to the third quadrant. I want there to be an arrow there, so I right click, I choose arrowheads at the end point. I'm going to get rid of those axes there, it's making things a little busy. And then in order to get this arc here, I am going to actually create a circle with a center there and go about that far maybe. And then let me actually do that again, but I want the circle to have this other endpoint on the x-axis there. Then I'm going to draw an arc, choose the arc tool here, and I'm going to go from, wait, one more thing. I need to actually find the intersection between the circle and that line segment. So I'm going to go to construct intersection. And now I'll draw the arc from there all the way over to there. Now it looks like nothing happened because everything's the same color. But if I right click on the circle, make sure, notice I'm clicking down here where the circle is, not up here where the arc is, because the arc is on top of the circle because I did that last. And I right click or I just do Control H, and now that circle is gone. I don't need that point K anymore, so I can actually delete that. And then I can right click that and I can choose the color. Maybe this time I want it to be navy. You can choose the different style if you want it to be a dot dash, something like that. And you can hide all of these points. So I hid all of those points. And then if I wanted to do this other, I wanted an arrow on the end of it, right click arrowheads at the end point there. It looks a little bit weird because of the dot dash thing. And then if I want to do another little arc right here, like I have in my pasted image, I need to do another circle. another circle here and here. And then if I can also do, let's see, I'm going to take that and that, construct the intersection, and then do the arc to go from this point M to this point that they're calling K. And I'm going to right click on the circle and hide that circle. And then this, I don't need that point M anymore. And then this line, we're going to do an arrowhead, excuse me, at the end. And then you can change the color. And then you can hide all of the points and you get something similar to that. All right, I'm going to show you a couple more things. One of them is I'm going to show you how to do this Venn diagram where only that portion of the Venn diagram is shaded. I'm going to turn on my axes and I'm going to do 2 overlapping circles. And I'm going to maybe go from here to maybe 4, and then from maybe here to here. Now I'm going to draw a segment from B to A and another segment from C to D, and I'm going to make those segments congruent. And because I can drag these around and they're not connected to each other in any way. So I'm going to make these congruent like so, and then drag that inside, or maybe I want it to be about there, Okay, now I want to hide my radii, and I'm going to select this circle and I'm going to fill properties, gray, but nothing happened. So now I go to fill properties, fill style, and solid. That's a bit annoying that you have to do with that thing twice. So I have that, but now I want this other one white. So if I do fill properties, color, white, and then of course I have to do it again, fill properties, fill style, solid. This isn't exactly what I'm looking for because it's like transparent. So you want to right click and choose the fill properties, transparency, and make that 0%. So that looks a bit like the MasterCard logo, but I'm missing that little arc there that the white circle is now covering up. So I'm going to create the arc on top of that. So I need those points of intersection. So I'm going to select the 2 circles. I'm going to construct the intersection, and then I'm going to grab the arc tool and I'm going to do the arc, and then it knows that the circle's underneath it. Oh, there we go. And there we have it. So now I just need to hide that point E and that point F. And there I have my nice overlapping circle Venn diagram. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is this tool that is for Ngon, which is kind of a nice tool. So if I'm just going to select the Ngon tool, and maybe I go from this origin for no particular reason. And I go out here to around where the 2 is. Then here I have my Ngon, and it's asking me how many sides I want it to be. Maybe I say 6. I press enter, and then I get a perfect hexagon. Turn off my axes, and the default color is this, bluish color. But if I don't want it to be shaded, I can't press delete. It keeps deleting my hexagon. So I'm just going to say fill properties, fill style none. All right, and then it's just white. And then these little blue things here, I can just hide that because I don't need that. But maybe I want to draw in the apothem or the apothegm. I have heard it's pronounced apothem. But I want it to be perpendicular here, so I'm going to go to construct the midpoint and then draw my segment from A down there to K. And then, of course, it should be perpendicular. If I select those, let's see what happens if I do that. I get an error. And this happens sometimes. It says, constraint tries to move items that are already fixed. So that's okay. I just want it to be annotated as perpendicular. That's really all I needed was that symbol. And then I can I can do the annotate the length of that. And so choose those 2 points, annotate the length like so. And then you can type in the number here, 13 centimeters or whatever, and drag that. Well, I don't need that K. I'm trying to drag that. The K, we can get rid of that, hide that. All right, and then you have a very nice looking, of course, you can hide all of these other points that you don't want. And we have a nice looking regular hexagon. Okay, one more thing I'm going to show you is coloring a segment on a circle. So I'm going to take my circle tool, create my circle, create another line. I'm going to radius there from A to B, another radius there from A to C, and then a segment or line segment from B to C. And then what I want to do is shade that little segment there between that chord and that arc. So first I need the arc. So I'm going to put the arc there from B to C. And it's the same color as the circles. You can't really see the arc. You can even select the arc length and maybe make the line thickness, maybe even make it a little bit thinner. So it's really not obvious that it's there. But then I select the arc and that chord. And notice over here for the construct, they've got this construct. It says circle, but it's really just going to be that segment there. And so that's quite nice that you can just very quickly shade that little bit without having to do any kind of trickery like what I did with the Venn diagram. And then lastly, some of these other tools, I don't use the curve approximation. If I'm going to be graphing functions, I tend to use graphfree.com or Autograph, which was what my presentation was about last summer, or Desmos if I'm just doing a calculator. But if I want to make a graph for a worksheet, I'll use graphfree.com or Autograph. But there's an arc tool, there's a hyperbola tool where you can have that. There's a parabola with the focus and the vertex. There's an ellipse tool. You can graph functions here, but I don't do that. And then, like I said down here, you have the Greek symbols and the annotation symbols. So when you're creating a text box, you can put in, like 35, and then go here to the annotation and put the degree symbol. And so then that's quite useful to have that. Sometimes though, I'll take my diagrams and then I will, one thing I haven't talked about yet is the exporting. If you pay for the software, you can save these, you can export them as images. I tend to not do that. I tend to just do a screenshot. So on my PC, it's like the snipping tool or whatever, and then I'll just paste it into my Word document or my PowerPoint presentation or whatever. And then sometimes if I want to add some kind of annotation that I can't do easily within the software, I'll paste it into a PowerPoint presentation, and then I can add different layers into the PowerPoint to kind of get it looking exactly how I want it to look. So that's my strategy there. So as you can see, there was a lot of power involved in that math illustration software. If you're interested in more, I do have another little smaller video on this blog post where I show how to make a parallelogram, just to be refreshed that with the skills there, and you can read a bit more about math illustrations. The VIP resource, if you got a VIP ticket for this summer math summit, the VIP resource that I provided is the right triangle trig card sort. And you can see kind of in this little image here that I used math illustrations to make some of my diagrams, and I used PowerPoint to make other illustrations for these word problems. But you can grab a copy of that if you have a VIP ticket. And another reminder about the free resource, this document here is either as a Word document or as a PDF with some images. I made some of these images for you today, or I showed you how to make them. There's some other images on the second page, and you can grab this and copy and paste and put them into your own worksheets, your own presentations if you don't want to make them yourself. But again, go down to that bit.ly link and grab that free resource. Okay, I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and I hope to hear from you soon. Here are some ways to get in touch with me. My email address is rebecca@hoffmath.com. You can go to my website at hoffmath.com. There's my Instagram handle at hoff_math. I do spend a lot of time in my Facebook group for Algebra 2 Pre-Calculus and Calculus teachers. If you want to head over there and join my group, and I hope to hear from you soon. Thanks.